Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to another Globinar for Global Chamber. Really appreciate you participating today and learning about a topic that's probably a level deeper than we typically go. Most of our members around the world are executives in the C-level group. And so my sense is not a lot of them know too much about certificates of origin. I honestly didn't know very much about it until recently when we've been speaking with some of our other members around some of the trade agreements, and in particular USMCA, and how the rules for certificates of origin are changing so that there's more understanding and better clarity on what percentage of each product is made in each country. And so because of that, and because USMCA in North America is coming on July 1st, businesses certainly doing business in that region need to know more about this. And on top of that, there are ways to not just understand it, but do it more effectively and doing it easier. So we've got really the world's expert on certificates of origin here to speak about it. And we also have a logistics expert who's extraordinarily amazing, and she'll provide her perspective as well. So the certificates of origin foundational information will be coming from Wendy Baggett. She's the president and CEO of the American World Trade Chamber of Commerce. We were just chatting prior to launching this Globinar, and she has been to 99 countries. She had been planning to go to number 100 when all of this hit. And so, Wendy, so sorry to hear that you're stuck on 99 for now. And believe me, all of us are looking forward to seeing number 100 for you as soon as possible. Thank you today for sharing your expertise and your information about certificates of origin, including the new collaboration with Global Chamber. So thank you very much in advance.
You're welcome.
So we'll get your slides loaded up and we'll get going.
Okay, well,
there you go.
There we go. I suppose we should just start at the beginning then. What is a certificate of origin? It's a document attesting that goods that are exported in a shipment have been wholly obtained, produced, manufactured, or processed in a particular country. COs may be requested by customs administrations, importers, freight forwarders, or banks for clearance of letter of credit. Virtually every country in the world considers the origin of imported goods when determining what duty will be assessed, and in some cases, whether they may be legally imported at all. The first COs were issued in France as early as the 19th century. It was not until 1923, though, that their issue and the associated certification of other export documents were first regularized. This came about under the provisions of the International Convention relating to the simplification of customs formalities held in Geneva. Under those provisions, national governments were allowed to delegate the administration of certifications to third-party, unbiased organizations, which possess the necessary authority and offer the necessary guarantees to issue certificates of origin. Chambers were the ones designated to fill this role. This designation was reaffirmed under the 1999 revised Kyoto Convention. So this brings me to the American World Trade Chamber. Who are we? We're a national chamber headquartered in New York City with regional offices around the country, and our focus is on exports. We're members of the International Chamber of Commerce in Paris, as well as the USCIB and the US Chamber and other organizations. And I'm pleased to say that we are the designated chamber partner of Global Chamber in providing export documents. We're also partners of a number of other organizations that help exporters, such as Shipping Solutions, which provides templates for creating your documents. Our mission is to encourage the exports of goods and services from the U.S. by providing international best practices and compliance solutions. We were the first chamber in the United States to have our staff wholly certified by the International Chamber to issue certificates of origin, and we are the only chamber in the US to be accepted into the International Chamber of Commerce accreditation chain, which I'll tell you more about in a minute. And as the president, I am the US delegate to the ICC World Chambers Federation Certificate of Origin Council. That's just a fancy way of saying that I help and serve on the committee that sets the rules for COs and am an expert on this type of export documentation. I mentioned the accreditation chain of the ICC a minute ago. This chain affirms that chambers are mutually responsible and globally interconnected, assuring businesses, traders, banks, and customs administrations that the COs are issued in accordance with international best practices. The agreement certifies that chambers of commerce will commit to issue COs with the highest level of quality, implementing transparent and accountable verification procedures. As accreditation chain members, they agree to follow the Certificate of Origin guidelines, which are the internationally acceptable and accepted standards, as well as national procedures. So what does this mean to the exporter? The benefits of using an accredited chamber include reinforced credibility of CO issuing, a raised level of acceptance by customs and exporters. Our stamp is registered with customs and accepted around the world. In addition, we're the preferred US chamber for countries like Vietnam, UAE, China, Qatar, recently Uzbekistan. Ability to offer assurance of transparent, independent, trustworthy, and accountable issuing procedures. We can provide defense against possible false declarations, and this has happened a number of times. We offer a guarantee of compliance with international issuance standards and the global affiliation and recognition by use of ICC World Chambers Federation CO level on our forms, on our forms. We also have third-party verification worldwide at certificates.iccwbo.org. In addition to this accreditation chain verification, our own web-based platform allows verification on all the data of each certificate using a unique 20-digit code generated on chamber approval. Many times this has resulted in uncovering suspected fraud by customs or by the importer and saved the exporter thousands of dollars. Unfortunately, there are also documents issued by chambers that don't exist. And sometimes the chamber name is real, but the stamps applied are fake or not applied by the chamber itself. If you're using a chamber stamp for your documents in your possession, it's a clear violation of the rules, should be returned to the chamber. And we can offer you some standard solutions for that. While we're discussing the accreditation and fraud, let me tell you a few more benefits of our platform. We're dedicated to compliance and security. We'll talk about compliance in a little bit, so let's talk about security for a minute. Our platform is web-based, which eliminates the need for unsecured emailing. Email is used only to provide user transaction notices and exporter alerts. COs and related export documents are never transmitted via email by the system due to inherent and widely known email security weakness. Did you know that one of the biggest loss leaders for exporting is piracy? Yes, you heard that right. I don't think it's the pirates that say, "Arr, mateys, let's go get that ship." But, you know, it's the ones that hack your email and get the information out that the certain shipment of diamonds is on a particular ship, in a particular section, in a particular container. And none of us want that happening. We also have a security background on our document that reduces fraud. As I mentioned earlier, unique serial numbers assigned to every document to facilitate customs verification with the ICC. Last security item is credit card processing. Security of our processing for payments of chamber certification and legalization fees is very important to American World Trade. We've partnered with Bambora, a leading credit card processor, for Visa, MasterCard, American Express in 65 countries to ensure the highest level of credit card security. Our PCI compliant solutions work with a process called tokenization, the latest e-commerce security innovation. cardholder data is collected and stored in a customer profile in Bambora's secure database. Customer orders are processed by submitting secure tokens rather than requiring purchasers to re-enter the card information. If you choose to save your credit card details on our system, and you don't have to, the details are actually saved on the card processor's secure PCI compliant servers. So lastly, what do the benefits of our electronic certification mean to you? So you can apply and print at your desk. It saves exporters time on exporters on couriers, time, postage, parking by going down to your local chamber. Our web-based saving exporters on document creation time, training, and repetitive applications. We have compliance features that reduce shipment delays and storage fees due to incomplete documentation. We operate on a software as a service model, so you only pay when you need something. Online archive with audit trail, fully searchable database and attachments, and of course, we offer support. So now let's move on to discussing the CO itself. Here's a sample of our electronic CO. They've actually been around for quite a while, and they are widely accepted by customs. Probably 95% of the countries currently accept electronic COs. We find that importers are stuck in the old way of doing things, and they still want paper documents. In an ever-changing business environment that continues to modernize by the second, the electronic delivery of certificates of origin has become essential. Online CO services expedite the application and issuance process, as well as security. ECOs ensure greater level of transparency, reduce costs, and save time among customs administrations, exporters, importers, bankers, stakeholders. There are, of course, a few exceptions. Some countries who are non-signatories to the Hague Convention abolishing the requirement of legalization for foreign public documents still require paper documents and additional consular legalization. We do have allowances for that in our system and offer legalization service to our users. As a member of the ICC accreditation chain, which we've already discussed, we're bound to abide by the ICCCO guidelines. Widely accepted, they've been translated into 6 languages. They are acknowledged as contributing to the harmonization of issuance procedures, advancing the promotion to trade facilitation, and creating a more efficient and effective trade environment. One of the most important ideas to understand is country of origin. According to the guidelines, origin refers to the place where the goods were produced, manufactured, processed, or grown. It does not refer to the port of departure. So when creating your CO, you will be asked to provide documentary evidence of the origin of your goods. This should be clearly indicated on your commercial invoice or other support documentation that accompanies the CO. And before we move off this slide, if you could just go back 1 second. I just want to point out each document is issued a serial number. That's at the top in red. And right underneath it, it says verify at certificateoforigin.com. That's the unique 20-digit code that you can use for full verification of this document to show that nothing's been altered on there. Of course, we've got the ICC seal on there as well as our seal. So we can move on. Different proofs of origin, and when you sign up to use the system, you get this information to refer to, talking about where the goods are manufactured and how to determine what the country is of manufacture. And while we're discussing the goods of manufacture, often auto vehicles provides a little bit of an issue. So this information is here to use as a guide, and it comes to everyone who signs up to use the system. As always, there's exceptions. We take those on a case-by-case basis. They mainly include textiles and textile products, essential spare parts for equipment, either to be already exported, secondhand goods, reconditioned goods, and antiques. Those are a lot of exceptions we see. So when do you create your CO? Your CO should normally be created within 7 days in advance of the shipment and within 3 weeks after your shipment. The exception to this is non-Hague countries that require legalizations in cases like Iraq maybe. It can take a month to have your documents legalized. Of course, there are always exceptions on the later end as well. We refer to these as retrospective COs, and they require a little more information. Regardless of the circumstance, COs are dated on the date they are actually approved. Any errors in certificates, unfortunately, at this time, the ICC website does not accept alterations. So if there's an error, you apply for a new one as a replacement and the original gets voided. We do work with you to make sure your document is correct before the final approval. And when appropriate, we advise on country-specific legalizations. I should also mention that we do certificates of free sale as well as authentication services on health certificates, USDA documents. So most of what I've detailed today applies to US companies, but of course there are exceptions. The rule states that COs must be issued in either the country of origin or the country of the consignor. As always, we have few exceptions to the rule, especially for multinational companies and companies with US partners or subsidiaries. You can always contact me for more information. So I want to thank you for your time. I know we went through this quickly, so we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers. I hope you gleaned a few nuggets to help you be more competitive in your exporting.
Thank you so much, Wendy. I really appreciate it. And we will have time for questions. We already have several. You can send them into the Q&A section, or you can send an email like the ones I'm getting, info@globalchamber.org, and we'll be able to process them one way or another. So we would like now to shift to our second speaker, and then we'll have time for Q&A. The second speaker is Caitlin Balderrama. She's Air and Ocean Branch Manager at Main Freight Americas. She is one of the smartest people I know about logistics, and so because she handles it around the world and including within her company, they're seem to be everywhere. I thought it would be a good idea for her to share her perspectives on this and perhaps some of the things that she's seeing that are changing out there so that you can be prepared. So Caitlin, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. You like Wendy, have quite a global background yourself. I don't know if you're up to 99 countries or not, but I know you've lived in 5 countries, I think, and you speak 4 languages. So you are definitely an official member of the global tribe. And are you there? And are you muted, maybe? Oh, you're muted. Go ahead. Unmute yourself.
I muted myself. Thank you, Doug, for the introduction. And I'm excited to participate today on this call.
Fantastic.
So Wendy, this was a great presentation regarding the exports and the importance of a certificate of origin. There's also a flip side regarding imports as well. And you covered so much on the export side. I don't really know I don't want to repeat anything that you said. So I thought maybe I would flip it a little bit and give people some information regarding imports, because that's another question as well. And it goes both ways in terms of customs compliance. So what I wanted to mention was that there's 2 types of certificates of origin, and there's a few reasons why people might want to have a certificate of origin. One might be for peace of mind, and that would be more non-preferential. So those are the certificates where you want to confirm that your product really is a product from XYZ country. One example I have could be Manuka honey, which comes from New Zealand and Australia, and it can sell for up to $400 a kilo. So a customer who is importing a very expensive product per kilo and they want to sell it here in the US, they would like to have that certificate of origin just for their peace of mind that they're using that correct name brand of that origin. there have been scandals in the past where people will ship from another country into New Zealand, have it cross-dock or sit there at the port, and then they sneakily create a false certificate of origin saying it's from New Zealand when it actually came from an entirely different country, but they're selling falsified counterfeit honey, essentially. And that's why I thought it was so important that Wendy mentioned that a country of origin is not the point of last departure. It is where the product was either created, grown, or substantially formed to become that new product. And that can trip people up constantly. The other type is preferential certificates of origin. And those are ones where you are trying to take advantage of a reduced tariff or a tariff that is completely eliminated. For example, if you're importing something from China, but the product was definitely created in another country and not from China. China's just the reseller. In order to avoid the Section 301 tariffs that we're all facing right now due to the higher imports from China, you might want to pursue a certificate of origin from the actual producer or from the reseller. And then other regional trade agreements. The US has about 18 trade agreements right now. Caribbean Basin, Andean trade, generalized system of preferences is one. So for example, if you're importing from a country that is disadvantaged and lower income, such as Myanmar, you can receive a reduced tariff that is lower than what that product might be, but it's based completely on the country of origin. So you need that certificate in your back pocket in case customs ever comes knocking. And you want to make sure that you have all your P's and Q's in line to ensure that you do have the correct country of origin for when you claim on your customs entry that the goods are subject to the GSP program is what we call it. So there are programs that exist. You can certainly talk to your freight forwarder, talk to any kind of expert in the field or a customs broker to see if your products do apply to the reduced tariff. And that certificate of origin can be requested at any time from customs up to several years after the entry. So in that case, you do want to keep your records and maintain all of your records, not just toss it the minute the entry is finalized. There are a few different kinds of certificate of origin, and I saw this on Wendy's website as well. For example, for NAFTA and likely for MCA, a shipper can fill out their certificate of origin themselves. They would sign it, it's a Word document, and they're done on their letterhead. But then there's the additional ones which are great for the ICC, that they're great for providing that more peace of mind or that greater security and traceability, especially when you're looking at food or very expensive products or a product with a supply chain that requires traceability. And that's where you need to go that additional step. And it's not simply signing on a Word document that's sufficient as a certificate of origin. So it's important to ask your forwarder before you get too far along in the process when you are exporting or importing. You do want to verify what type of certificate of origin you do need, because you might need the Word doc one, which is fantastic, but then you might need that certified one, and you want to make sure you have everything in line before you import or export your product and you're not scrambling last minute. And let's see here. There are a few other notes that I have regarding certificate of origin, but it can be waived in certain circumstances. So that's also important to ask. For example, if you have a very low value product, certificate of origin might not be required, but in other cases, it's a very important product to either help you close a sale to a customer. They want to confirm it's definitely US made goods, which is another part of your document packet. Or on the import side, you want to be in line for your US customs entry and have that full traceability of your supply chain. So with that said, I'll put it back to Doug to see if you had any other questions or comments or open it up.
I really appreciate you adding that component. Wendy, what's your reaction to that? Because I know you were focusing on the export side of it earlier.
We do focus on the exports, but the imports are just as important. Our chamber does not the U.S. chambers don't sign preferential certificates of origin, just the non-preferential. So sometimes I just tend to focus on that and not think about it as a whole. So Caitlin brought up some great great points about the other certificates of origin.
Okay, that sounds good. We have a number of questions, and so keep them coming in both online and by email as well. The first one, and Caitlin, you mentioned Section 301 tariffs that are impacted so many people. We know that the number of trade agreements has gone from in 1990 to 60 around the world. Today, there's about 300, so a factor of 5x over those 30 years. And part of those trade agreements, like the new USMCA, they're tightening down on understanding where these where products are actually really made, where, as you both pointed out, where the significant amount of input to the product was made. What are you seeing anything already, either of you, in the United States, Canada, or Mexico relative to USMCA? Are exporters or importers acting differently at this point, or are requiring different information, or are they finding that existing certificates of origin need to be changed based on these rules? What are you seeing, whether it's this trade agreement or with others, in terms of how exporters and importers are reacting? Anything yet on that?
I have not yet for MCA. It hasn't become full force yet, but for NAFTA previously, it was not even, it was more of the template completed, where it was a Word document. So it'll be interesting to see how things do change with customers and essentially recreating all of their forms and their process for certificates of origin. Hasn't come through yet, but it will start once the MCA becomes full force.
Okay, very good. Wendy, anything yet on your side?
I agree. NAFTA is the NAFTA form was a self-certification type of document, so we haven't seen anything from that. Okay.
Are you imagining that there'll be a shift toward more electronic COs, or do you see any trends there going forward?
I think they'll offer electronic solutions for that. Yep. It is a self-certification, so since they don't have to get it stamped by a chamber, it's a whole lot easier document to produce.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Just as an aside, I do recommend that if you haven't gone through that information yet, because July 1st is coming up, we do have resources to be able to help you there. So just send an email to info@globalchamber.org. The old, it always works, and we'll find a way to connect you up to people who can help on those changes. The next question from Mark, the question is, using distributed ledger technologies such as Ethereum, how do these work for proof of authenticity? Do either of you have experience with that, or with distributed ledger techs?
We do not use that. Our system requires either manufacturer declaration or commercial invoice proof for the proof of origin. However, when we work with large companies, we do get their affidavit of information and keep it on file. It's not something they have to submit with every single document. So we do keep that type of information on file that we can refer to for their certificate.
I see. Got it. I presume, Caitlin, you don't usually get involved in that level of detail around that.
No, that's a question for Wendy.
Yeah, for sure. So, and this one might be back to Wendy as well, regarding AWTCC. or any other issuer, how do you actually know the product is from local origin? So maybe kind of walk us through how that process works. Like in Caitlin's example with the Manuka honey, what's the process to know whether it's real or not, whether they're counterfeiting? Yeah, shed a little bit of light on that whole process when it's done right, and then when there's counterfeiting involved.
So we have a number of users from our system, for our system, members, non-members, but we try to research every member we have a vetting process for every member. We want to know either their manufacture process or where they're getting their goods from. We ask for a lot of different types of information when they first sign on to our system. When it's coming from another country, we do like to see a certificate of origin from when it came to the US, so that importing certificate of origin, so that we can verify that information. It's like a chain of custody type of thing. We want to see where the information came from before, and one of the things that we do is ask for additional information when we feel something's not quite right or needs to be clarified. So we obviously don't go to every location and go tromping around in their warehouse to see what they're doing. You know, we have to take some manufacturer's declaration, usually is the standard template, but we also chamber partners, chambers like you, who know their customers, and we rely on those relationships with their local chambers to know the clients that are businesses that are on the up and up, as well as we rely on our freight forwarders who have those relationships with local exporters.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. In a related question, or it's along the same lines, this one is also from Mark, concerning the export of salvage goods to foreign countries for the repair or repurpose. Does the CO need to reference the USA as the source of export, or does it need to track back now to where the product might have been made originally? Let's say it's a Japanese automobile or an engine, you know, that's being salvaged in the US and now being shipped out. You know, how far back does it go in the supply chain?
Well, salvage goods has their own section of rules, so it's not necessarily cut and dried. If it's a whole car that's salvaged, it would be according to the VIN number of the car where it was done. But if it's just individual parts, it would be from their original country of origin. And it's more involved than just that, but that's, I guess, the short answer for today.
Okay, got it. So people in that industry, presumably they know very well. Mark, if you have additional questions about that, let us know.
Sure.
Wendy, is everything that you're doing on the export side, and is there always the from the US or to the US? What's the kind of the scope of work for the electronic COs?
Everything that we're doing is on the export side. So when we're contacted by an importer from another country who needs a certificate of origin, we contact the exporter on their behalf here and try to help them create that certificate of origin that the importer needs. Chambers are only authorized to produce documents, to authorize documents that for companies in their country or goods that were produced in their country. So if somebody from China wants to ship a Taiwan-made thing to Myanmar, we don't have anything to do with it. It's somehow got to be related to the US for us to be involved.
What does that system look like globally? You know, are there similar organizations to yours that do that between countries like that?
Yeah, so chambers in other countries would be the authority to do that. And I might add that the software platform we use is actually in 60 some countries. So, and there are a number of countries, chambers that are now belonging to the ICC accreditation chain. So these chambers in other countries, you can look at the ICC website to see what chambers belong to that chain. And I think that would be the first point of contact for anybody who needs to do that in another country.
Okay. Are there competing systems, or is that the one system around the world?
Oh no, there's more than one system. Yeah, there's a few systems. Of course, the one we use is best.
Of course. This is a little bit of a very specific question. I actually thought I heard it too. You mentioned about, and maybe jokingly, about someone looking for diamonds in a container. I think we'd all love to know who's shipping diamonds in containers. But you were just joking there, right? Or did we mishear?
No, I'm not joking.
So so people do ship diamonds in containers? That's
well, how else are you going to ship it? You got to ship it somehow.
okay.
Some
So
go in containers, some go in personal couriers. You know, they go in different ways. But the point of that is, though, that when you're emailing information, it's insecure, and hackers, that's the type of information they're looking for. When they're going to attack a container ship, they know what they're looking for. They know what's in those containers because they've hacked emails, and they know what's being shipped. They don't just, you know, look out on the horizon and say, oh, hey, there's a ship, let's get it. You know, it's a very targeted shipments that they're looking for.
wow. Okay.
And that's where security plays a big part.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Caitlin, do you see that kind of fraud often, and what are some of the steps that logistics providers are taking to avoid that? I presume it's even beyond, you know, electronic certificates of origin. There are other things that you need to do to protect these shipments.
Right, so security by email is really the most important, and also knowing who your customer is and knowing who the end user is. That's incredibly important as well. So when forwarders are working on an export, they're asking the customer the basic red flag questions, not only for us to complete the AES, which is export customs clearance, so that the US knows what's coming in and out of the country and their value. And that's, by the way, how we understand if we're in a trade deficit with a country or not, is based on the data that the AES sends through when your forwarder does your export customs clearance. So in that way, we're able to vet our customers. So if it's a questionable product or a very high value product going to a country where the US has rocky relations, or if it's going to a forwarder in Germany and then that's it, they don't want to tell us the actual end user's address. But just going to a freight forwarder dock, we know they're not the purchaser of some high-end semiconductor equipment or tools that can be used to make gun parts. It's somebody else who is actually buying that laser cutting tool. And so it's a matter of just really vetting and understanding who your customers are and asking any questions if there are red flags. On the electronic side, it's very serious. I'm sure that, you know, there have been recent examples with toll down in Australia. Maersk was another one. I think people remember about a year ago when steamship lines such as Maersk was down for months and nobody knew where their containers were and could understand where the cargo was. And it's because of a simple email that somebody clicked on and they shouldn't have. So it's taken seriously by a lot of forwarders as a very serious threat to the business and then trickling down to our customers as well. Regular IT trainings, I know my company does tests where you have a phishing button on your Outlook and they might send you a fake email and just test you. And if you failed and you clicked on it and it could have been a potential email hacker, you have to go to mandatory training and attend a webinar. So it's serious that a lot of forwarders have dealt with. On the customs side, for paperwork forged documents do come through, and sometimes it doesn't seem forged at first, but it's a matter of just, that's why the original documents are so important. If the watermark looks off, or if there is no watermark, or the traceability with the 20-digit code and the website that Wendy's company has for traceability to verify it's not a forgery, those are the other second guesses that we can, the second checks that we can do to verify. There's always people who are trying to sneak something by. Potentially, you just have to be on your guard.
How often does that happen? How prevalent is it?
For forged documents?
Right, is it 1 in a million, 1 in 100, 1 in 10? You know, what kind of, how often do you see these kinds of things coming up in the work that you're doing?
For forged documents, Wendy might have more experience on seeing that, but for us, it's more questionable of, I don't think this is the right kind of customer. I'm not really sure if they're doing accurate business. People more use the freight forwarder to get around this system. They ship something Croatia to New York, and then they want it to transit New York to Oakland, and they want to make sure it sails Oakland over to China, because they're getting around the trade agreements where Croatia and China might not have a friendly business relationship, and that's where they take advantage of forwarders who don't ask enough questions.
Got it.
And we've been contacted by customs. We're contacted regularly by different customs around the world trying to verify different documents. And we've discovered forged notaries or for chamber stamps that unfortunately, it's been a prevalent practice in the US for chambers to lend out their stamps. But they're understanding that this is not the best practice and trying to get them all back. So we were just approached this week by some importers in Turkey trying to verify that the goods are US goods, and it looks like the exporter used a stamp that some freight forwarder had, because the chamber whose stamp it is had no knowledge of it. And these are, you know, obviously documents that no one knew anything about. So we do see it. I would say it's happening at least once a month recently. And that's just us that is being contacted. I'm sure there are other chambers are seeing that as well. There's 7,000 chambers in the United States. They don't all issue documents, but those stamps are out there and people are using them.
Okay, wow. Only one global chamber, fortunately, and we are also able to do the electronic certificates of origin now. One thing that we didn't really hear yet, and this was, I'm kind of reading into one of the questions, Caitlin, tell us more about Main Freight and Main Freight Americas and what you guys do. You know, how global are you? Kind of give us a little bit of the scale of the company and also your involvement with the firm as the air and ocean branch manager in Phoenix, I believe.
Yeah. Main Freight is a publicly traded company. We are a global 3PL. We provide air, ocean, warehousing, and customs brokerage to our customers around the world. We have 260 offices across 26 different countries at the moment, and we're expanding new countries every year. So the primary footprint that we have would be across Europe and Asia, all the way down to Malaysia. Japan, we have 2 offices, and China, we have 9 offices, for example, to give you an idea of the footprint. And then we were founded in New Zealand, so that is where the company has its global headquarters and its primary base. And then down into South America and the Americas, which include Canada and 2 offices in Mexico. So we have quite a global footprint. We have a strong offering to our customers, and the way that we operate is via decentralized service. So instead of having one branch on the East Coast, one branch in the US Central, and then maybe West Coast based on time zones, we locate ourselves close to our customers, which explains why we have this office in Phoenix, Arizona, for example. We're closer to the pulse of where our customers' freight is moving. If they need help, we show up the next day in person to be able to assist them, COVID notwithstanding. And same across the US. For the US example, we have 30 different offices. And that includes offices that are both transport-based, so LTL trucking, local white glove delivery, owner drivers is how we operate. We don't subcontract out to agents. And then also an air and ocean or a full warehouse logistics facility as well, where we do pick and pack and retail shipping to any of our customers that they might need shipping to. So we're a company of over 8,000 employees, been around since 1978, very stable and growing. It's great to announce that we haven't had any furloughs or lost anybody from our team through COVID, where a lot of forwarders had to unfortunately cut their ranks or saw some unfortunate downturn due to COVID. We've actually grown 11% this year. And that's due to our expansion and the fact that we provide our customers excellent local decentralized customer service. And we're here when you need us.
Fantastic. I really appreciate that. What do you personally get involved with day to day?
So I'm the branch manager here in Arizona, and what that includes is sales, operations, customs entry writing, and really acting as a key account manager for our customers' accounts here. So we have an operations team, we have our full trucking team for local pickups, but being a branch manager includes a little bit of everything, and making sure our customers are taken care of is the primary point. But I do operations for air export, import, ocean, LCL on a daily basis as well, to make sure that everything is operated timely.
And presumably most imports in, or what's the kind of distribution of activities that you're involved with?
So we do have imports in, but we actually have more exports than imports.
Right.
And even with Phoenix not shipping internationally for air because of COVID, there are still air exports that people are moving cargo out of either Dallas or Los Angeles. So we as a company here in Phoenix, we've seen a breakdown that's more export than imports, but it's a nice breakdown because it means that Phoenix is growing and producing. So it's great to see.
Okay, great. Another question relates back to certificates of origin, more specifically about, and maybe this is for you, Caitlin, or both of you can answer, related to which countries the self-certification is more applicable, like mentioned earlier about NAFTA or presumably going forward with USMCA versus other countries that are more specific about information that would be that an electronic certification would require. Or where are the easy places and where are the difficult places based on your experience? And either one, maybe Caitlin, you want to start with that, and then we'll go back to Wendy.
So there's the NAFTA countries where you can self-certify, and two other ones that have free trade agreements would be also Australia and New Zealand, because they have more friendly relations with the US. You can self-certify to sign the free trade agreement and not need the next step. But any country where you're trying to take advantage of reduced tariffs, or where there might be rocky business, or maybe there's just no trust between the buyer and seller, that's where you're going to be needing something that's certified to a higher level than somebody signing it and scanning it over to you. Some customers, for example, just a certain commodity might want to have that certificate of origin printed on their paperwork, but then they want it stamped with the original and then certified by the forwarder as well. So then there's a next step that there's somebody else signing the document or stamping that it's original and not a copy or a scan. And then those are FedExed over to the consignee. But I would say those are the top, is Oceania, and then the NAFTA MCA countries as well. And sometimes even importing into Europe, the European Union has some rules where they do want to confirm the origin of goods, because traceability is very important for the EU.
Yeah,
Got
I
it.
agree with that. The free trade agreements often have their own certificate of origin template, and those are the ones that are more self-certified than any of the others. So like I said, we do the non-preferential is the bulk of our certifications.
Okay, great. In terms of just kind of practical what to do next, Wendy, with this new collaboration between Global Chamber and AWTCC, Global Chamber does have a landing page, and we'll send the information out to those that are participating. We're actually formally announcing this in a news release next week. Could you tell us, you do this quite a bit, tell us, how people can contact us, and how does the process work for somebody who's interested in the electronic certificate of origin?
Sure, they can visit your landing page, and there's a registration form on there to use the system. So they fill out the registration form and return it to the Global Chamber, who in turn forwards it to us after they've confirmed that they have that existing relationship that we're looking for. And we sign them up to use the system. They'll get a welcome email with a one-page user guide. Our system is that easy. One page of instructions, and
little tiny print, right? No.
it is tiny print, but still it's only one page. There's really only 7 boxes on the form, the certificate of origin. So you fill out the form, and it's all done in just a matter of within an hour normally. We do guarantee for Global Chamber same-day processing. So whatever you submit that day would be reviewed and processed.
Fantastic. Really appreciate the collaboration. We only have just a couple minutes left, so we'll just go back to each of you for some final comments, and perhaps Caitlin, will start with you. What did we leave out? What would you like to emphasize? And a general question that we received, we'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of where are we headed with trade, and what's your crystal ball telling us or telling you about the next 6 months, 12 months in terms of what's going to happen?
First, to start off on the certificates of origin, I did want to mention 2 things. One is that it should be in English. So that's important for an exporter to find out if they're sending something to China. Does that certificate of origin need to be in Chinese, or does it need to be in English the way we're creating it? But if you're importing into the US Customs does require that it be in English, or a significant translation into English also be available. So a lot of people use bilingual forms, but keep that in mind, that if CBP asks for your certificate of origin and you say, well, here's one in a foreign language, you need to provide that translation within 5 days at a minimum. So ideally, you should just have it on hand right from the start, because they won't accept something that's only in a foreign language. And let me see here. The certificate of origin needs to be completed by the exporter. So if you're importing something and you need that certificate of origin to verify if it applies to a certain duty, you can't create that yourself as an importer. It really does need to be coming from the exporter, where they're the ones certifying that the country of origin is what they say it is on the documentation, on the boxes, on the stickers, on the actual product, for example. So those are the 2 things that I want to mention and make clear. In terms of the crystal ball, what we've seen is that with ocean trade, to start off, ocean trade has been narrowing down and running blank and void sailings around the world. And what that means is a steamship line would rather just take a full vessel out of rotation than have it run with only 10% full. And we're hoping that in the next quarter, maybe into September, those blanked and void sailings will start to reduce, And we'll be actually seeing more activity in transatlantic trade and trans-Pacific trade with ocean freight specifically, because 90% of the world's freight moves on the ocean. So by having a massive reduction of what we're seeing, we are seeing that trade has just dropped off. And I'm hoping to see some more freight, less blank sailings, because steamship lines are really hurting financially with this, because nobody's moving the cargo, so they have a lot of vessels sitting idle. With regards air freight, there has been a slow easing of air freight. There is more trade that's been happening, for example, between US and China, and then US and Oceania. So less people are relying on charters, and there are more regular flights that are occurring. And that's great to see. I also saw an email today where American Airlines is starting to open up more cargo centers for receiving and exporting cargo that they had closed due to COVID. So I can see some easing also on the air freight side, where we're going to be seeing more planes in the air as well, but it might be less frequency than it was. But it's going to be a while, probably be about a year or so for people to really see a full recovery. Another point is that the ISM noted that manufacturing is up in their latest report that was sent out yesterday as well. So that's great news to see that people are returning to work. They're starting to manufacture more, and that drop that we saw in March and April is slowly reducing.
Very good.
So it's coming back, but slowly.
Great view of the crystal ball. How about you, Wendy? We've got a minute or two left.
Okay. We did see an increase in April and May of the documents that we issued. And I think it's not due to more customers, but it's due to people shifting to the electronic process. As the world gets smaller, the electronic is becoming more and more important. More chambers are signing on to the ICC accreditation chain, and more customs are relying on that body to coordinate that effort of regulated agencies and make sure that everyone is providing transparent documents. And we just see this whole documentation process on the rise as the world becomes smaller.
Sounds good. And definitely virtual is in and better understood. And so the electronic documents are a great fit for that. Mm-hmm. Thanks to both of you. Really appreciate all that you do. Great work, and thank you for articulating all that really important information. Caitlin Balderrama and Wendy Baggett, thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
We're going to wrap up right now and just say that we really appreciate the new collaboration with WTCC, and watch for information in the next day or two about where you can get those virtual electronic documents through Global Chamber within the same day, as Wendy talked about, and you can save a parking fee at a local chamber by coming directly to the Global Chamber via email and electronic. And really everything that we do now is virtual, meaning Global Chamber. We've always been very virtual, by the fact that we're everywhere in the world. And so it's difficult to go have a cup of coffee with someone in Morocco, let's say, to do some business, but it's pretty easy to get a trusted, warm introduction to somebody in Morocco and start chatting right away and get business done right away. And that technique, those methods are becoming much more popular. I presume all of you are doing it now as well. We've talked about this for 5 years, and 5 years ago, people looked at us like, well, that's an interesting idea. And they probably walked away thinking it was crazy. You can't do international business without multiple trips, multiple contact points, but you know what? You can do it, and we're doing it every day. So thanks to the Global Tribe for participating regularly and for today. And again, thank you to our speakers. Have a great rest of your day. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy.
Bye.
Thanks, Caitlin. Really appreciate it.